Hello, everybody, and welcome to Traumaplicity Talk Show, where we look at trauma plus simplicity. So really taking anything complex and making it simple so we know that we can go one single simple step ahead to overcome adversity. My name is Dr. Amanda Helman. I am the founder of the Traumaplicity Talk Show. I am an author of 2 different books, a breakthrough coach, and a speaker. And today I am so excited to have Mike Martin. He is the founder of the Mindfully Outdoors podcast. And he is on today and will be sharing his story. So Mike, it's great to see you. Welcome. And if you have anything else you'd like to share about what you do, now's the time.
Well, it's Project Mindfully Outdoors.
There we go. Thank you.
But yeah, outside of that, with the podcast, there's a blog. There's a lot of articles and stuff like that that I share. I'm also in the process of putting out my very first book.
Excellent.
So that's going to be out this year. That's really exciting.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm excited for you. And so certainly the audience here on the Amanda Helman author and speaker page, you can tune into Mike's podcast. And Mike, where can they find you?
It's available just about everywhere you can get a podcast. So it's based off Anchor, but it's also on Spotify, Apple. There's all the other ones too, Stitcher. I've even slowly started integrating YouTube into it. So
it's amazing. Great. So you can tune on in, audience. So Mike, you're on this show today to share part of your story about trauma or things that you've overcome. So I'd like to hear more about that.
All right. Well, I guess the journey really started pretty close to 3 years ago as my second marriage came to an end, which was not the greatest of marriages or relationships. I wound up being on the, I guess, receiving end of a lot of emotional abuse and whatnot. And ultimately it left me alone, homeless, and I ended up blotching a suicide attempt in the process. And then a few days following that blotched suicide attempt, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking to Ryan Holiday, the author of The Obstacle is the Way. And he was talking about some quotes from Marcus Aurelius about adversity, which completely changed the way that I was viewing the current trajectory that I was on. And I had seen everything as being completely negative and, poor me that this is all happening. However, the quotes were about how the adversity that I was facing was an opportunity to showcase and highlight who I really was. And the last thing that was said to me face to face by my ex-wife was how my family, I didn't deserve them and I wasn't good enough for them. So when I stopped and I thought about that, it was not the narrative that I wanted to leave behind. I wanted to live and I wanted to not only survive, but I also wanted to thrive, to show my kids, just that exactly what I am inside, that I can take all these horrible, unfortunate acts that have happened and turn them around into something positive. And that's led to all kinds of great monumental milestones and achievements that have just continued to push the journey ahead. Ultimately, I founded Project Mindfully Outdoors.
That's amazing. And and your story again, I know that I was honored to be on your podcast. That's why I got to know part of your story during our conversation. And I love that you share that you had not love the events, right? But that there were
right.
really hard events that happened that led to that, you said like this, attempted suicide, just like devastation of not having your family and just hearing all those words. But then in your process, being able to turn it around to these events where you shared, you're writing a book, you have this podcast, you're shifting. And I know on your podcast, just information about what you do, it shares that you even started to do reconciliation with your family and your children. And those are some really amazing things that came out of some really hard times. So I appreciate you sharing. And especially, Mike, I don't, you may be able to talk more about this, but for men, it's not, I don't always feel like they share as much about the trauma or maybe even know how to go about that. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. It's kind of, as a guy, you're taught you just suck it up. You kind of John Wayne your way through everything. The feelings, the emotions, they don't apply to you because you've just got to step forward and get the job done. However, in reality, that stuff affects us too. We all have those hard moments. And if you take that John Wayne mentality, eventually you're going to burn out and you're going to kind of suck yourself into a hole where you're not giving the best of yourself to your family. And that's a definition of exactly what I did. And when I stopped and I finally started addressing things, that's when I was able to give a better version of myself to my kids and to, the people around me that actually matter.
Yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like you said you had to shift the narrative for yourself to say, yeah, usually for men, we're told to just suck it up and not really share it, which isn't healthy to not share the emotions. And you learned a new way. So you're actually shifting the projection of what maybe perhaps you've learned to teach that for your children and also to impact other people, which I think is amazing. I wanted to also ask you for the second part is what were 3 or 5 some simple steps you took during this to help you overcome some of the hard parts of your trauma?
It's kind of funny because the other day I was actually just watching Finding Nemo with my son, and the whole concept to just keep swimming because it was one step at a time. And it was a matter of beginning to address the things that were going on. Like, for example, the whole shock and awe of everything and where I was left. I was so petrified of making any decisions for myself or doing anything, to the point that it was hard and scary. And 9 times out of 10, I'd end up getting dinner at the end of the day because I couldn't make a decision on what restaurant to get something to eat from. And at some point, you just got to kind of put your foot down and say, it's time for things to change. And that was kind of a nice little stumbling block because that built a little bit of self-confidence. And then from there, like I was talking about earlier, how those quotes from different philosophy and whatnot really rang to me and really got me going. I really dove into that and journaling. I started really putting my day and the events, up for review, and that helped me to organize my thoughts. And when you channel all that stuff together and you start to just slow down, that's when you start to make progress.
That's good. So I know you said you had a lot of different philosophy quotes that were helpful to even start to begin to do something, even though there may have been anxiety, but starting to do something to move forward, that those shifts in brain. And also the journaling that you said that really helps to bring out and release some of those emotions or even help you, as you mentioned, organize thoughts. And those are some helpful tips. So in the audience, if there's men or women watching, those are some helpful tips. And I think, Mike, it's a process, it's a journey. Things might work for one person or not. And even obviously your podcast is part of like what you did, as well as counseling. I know you said you did counseling. Right. But what would you say to some men on here who are hesitant? Like they've been told, nope, you can't do it. What would be something of encouragement for them?
That you can. You just got to keep trying. There's no one size fits all, and there's no wrong when you try, because no matter what you're doing, you're gonna stumble, but you got to pick yourself back up and you got to keep going. And when you do that, then you're doing the right thing, no matter what the picture looks like at the moment. By making that progress, you're going to continue to go forward.
That's really good. So reminding all of them, just take that one step, that it's okay to be vulnerable as a man. It's okay to get the support you need, not just for you, but for your family, and to shift the narrative about men's mental health. And I think Mike, you've done that. You're reaching, different men. And I love um, I love that you have this project, Mindfully Outdoors, but I love that you have that because you're reaching different men, different people of different backgrounds, and at a time where there's mental health, especially after COVID, and as you shared, like we're not always sharing how we feel, and it's important. So what you're doing is really matters. And so, Mike, is there any other encouragement or quotes that you have for the audience? I know we talked about men, but people in general that may be going through what you are.
In general, like, no matter what the situation is, no matter what you're facing, whether it's good, whether it's bad, just keep in mind that you need that, because that's helping to mold who you are. Your character, that, whether it's showing right now and it's who you want to be, or it's a work in progress, that character is forged in fire, essentially. Just like a sword, how a blacksmith would forge a sword. They heat it up and they pound on it. And that's what life is doing to you. So when it seems like it's difficult, it's not about how difficult it is, or if you fall down, if you get knocked down. It's about getting back up, taking that next step forward.
Yeah, that's good. So every time we get knocked out, stand up, right? And it's all, even
Exactly.
7 times down, getting up and being proud of yourself for celebrating those simple steps, for sure. Yeah, I appreciate your story. And I know, Mike, we've talked before, and this is part of your story, although there's a lot in it. I'm sure we could probably do it out, right? We could probably do a whole hour or something on each different component, and I'm definitely would love to talk to you once you have your book out. That would be really impactful for us to hear what you did, and even your book, and be able to share about that when that happened. So I really, on the Traumaplicity, we talk about one little part of trauma, looking at the simple steps that we went through, and also encouraging the audience. So if you watch this, audience, and you have questions for Mike, please write them in the chat. I'll have Mike's podcast on top in the chat, or in the little comments, so you'll have that. And certainly I can get those to Mike, especially if men or women, if you have questions. I'm sure, Mike, that'd be okay if you answer. And if you have an email, Mike, certainly you can maybe share it now, or perhaps I can write it, just so in case there are maybe men or people who want to just reach out to you more privately. Is that possible that we can do that?
Absolutely. It's Project Mindfully Outdoors at gmail.com.
Okay, so I'll remember that. So projectmindfully@gmail.com. Thank you. So, Mike, any other lasting words you want to share with the audience for tonight?
Just keep trying. I mean, we've said it over and over again. There's a million different ways you could say it, but that's the theme right there.
It absolutely is. Well, thank you. So I appreciate having you on. This is Mike Martin from Project Mindfully Outdoors. He has a podcast, he does coaching, and has done a lot of great work, and a book coming out. And so we are on Traumaplicity Talk Show, and this show's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a little bit later if sometimes, but you always have it on there. So I'm really excited to see all of you next week. Again, if you have questions, you can put it down. Otherwise, we hope you have a great night. Thank you, Mike, for being on here, and take care, everybody.
Absolutely.
Bye, audience.